everybody. Yet another room rumble, and today we're talking with the incorrigible PTown, who I've run with the past. I've done an interview with him, and so I swung by his channel. He, along with a person named Power Word, were sort of making some pretty bold claims, and the Hovendism that we think that life came from a rock. So this was a point of contention. Power Word was basically saying, "Hey, humans, we need phosphorus for DNA. Phosphorus comes from rocks, so we came from a rock." Not realizing that just because you find chemicals in rocks doesn't mean that we're coming from the rocks. We're coming from the chemicals. So, I decided to go on and talk with PTown. And a lot of the stuff that he's sort of saying is kind of, oh, well, the other guy was saying that. PTown was saying, Power Word, I'm sorry, was saying that, not PTown. So I think PTown is sort of, he's sincere, but sort of his arguments don't hold up under scrutiny, in my opinion. Of course, he sort of, when you sort of run into problems with him, so you give him something that is problematic for his worldview, essentially, and this is a consistent thing over talking with Aaron Ra and other people. He sort of says, well, I haven't looked into that. I don't really want to discuss that. And I think that if he does go and look at it at some point, if he says, well, I haven't looked into that, I will look into it. But he doesn't kind of look into it. So I'd like to have another conversation with him on the scientific inaccuracies in the Bible. It's my contention that he's counting all of the things that he thinks are scientifically accurate and leaving off the things that aren't. So he made a claim that everything's scientifically accurate in the Bible, and that's just not true. He also claimed there's no contradictions in the Bible, and that's not true either. But when pressed, he sort of says, well, I haven't, I don't really want to look into it, I haven't had looked into it, and I don't really want to go into it at the moment, is what he says. But hopefully we can talk to him again. For the moment, let's get ready to rumble. So I guess with this question, what is a rock made up of, right? So minerals and silicates and things like that. So here's the conflation. You kind of say, oh, well, that came from a rock, like a rock gave birth to something. And that's not what we're talking about at all. Like if there is an oxygen molecule bound in a rock and that gets released, does that mean that the oxygen came from a rock?
I don't really care, Mark. I mean, honestly.
Why don't you care? Because you're sort of saying it like it's fact.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm just making fun of how sensitive you are about the issue, that you think that you came from a rock. Like the whole statement triggers you so much. Why?
Well, it's because the accuracy of science. Hey, caught in the middle. It's because the accuracy of science is very, very, very important. So when we're talking origins of things in a scientific sense, we're talking about the how of the process it was created. So when people start to misrepresent that and sort of say these crazy things about sort of how, trees give birth to this or trees can't get, it's kind of misrepresenting the accuracy of the science. And so we have to say, no, let's be precise in our language about what's happening here. I know that you sort of go, well, God sort of breathed life into, dust or whatever, and that's what created humans. But, as a religion, I don't really, that's fine. But as a scientific principle, we have to be a lot more accurate than what you're doing.
So you tell me, how did people and animals and all this stuff form then? Where did it come from your viewpoint?
How did they form?
Sure, what word you want to use, Mark.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a number
of how a rock didn't play a role in this.
Sure. So there's a number of competing hypotheses. So, um, with the discovery of uracil in an asteroid, I don't know if you caught that. The Japanese scientists found uracil, which is one of the base building blocks of RNA, in an asteroid. Um, it may be that I'm sort of leaning toward a
And what's in it? So
hypotheses.
something. So So right now, this example that you just gave, an
Yeah.
asteroid is could
Mhm.
you is what probably brought the RNA, which, just so you know, makes totally no sense at all. But would you agree
RNA
with
world
me?
is
Would you agree with
one
me
of the
that
hypotheses.
Would you agree with me that an asteroid is often referred to as a rock?
Yes, but you've got to differentiate between something being a rock, like a mineral rock, and something like you kept saying bound in the rock. And just because oxygen is often found in rocks, and other things like nitrogens and nitrates are found in rocks, it doesn't mean that the nitrogen or the oxygen is a rock. Like that's where you're going wrong. You think because something is contained within the is held together by the structure of the rock, then it is a rock. So you've got to differentiate between a an element or something on the periodic table, like sort of phosphorus, and a rock that is a composition. It's a structure, right? You do know that, right? That rocks aren't just sort of silica and that's it, or silicon and that's it, or they're not just, you know, they're a composition of things.
Well, I mean, you keep saying you, but this was Power's argument. I don't really care
Okay,
for this.
well, I guess
Just to clarify, I
the
mean,
I
one presented on your channel, I guess.
let
Yeah.
me try an approach on this, because I think I can approach this to make it a way that maybe it's understandable why it's not quite right to say. Can you
Yeah.
can you hear me? I didn't know if
yeah,
my
we
Yes.
can hear you.
Yes. Coming through
good,
beautifully.
good.
Yep.
Okay, so when we're in development, like embryonically, when you're growing inside your mommy's tummy, um, you're getting minerals, the same types of minerals that we're talking about here, included in your development. Those are being incorporated into your body, right? But you would not say that therefore you came from the iron in that bowl of cereal your mom ate. You wouldn't say, well, that's my parents are my mom, my dad, and this bowl of cereal with iron in it. You wouldn't say that, even though you've incorporated that iron in that mineral. That's just one of many minerals. I'm just using iron because it's the one that you can actually take a magnet and pull the iron right out of your Cheerios and see it. That you know that you're consuming minerals to be, to help you develop, right? But you wouldn't say that that was one of your parents. In the same way, you wouldn't say that the minerals that were incorporated by early life, or by even by prebiotic life, that those were the parent of those organisms, right? You wouldn't say that. You'd say they incorporated those minerals into their development the same way that you did when you were developing.
Okay. Well, how about this? I mean, again, I don't really care about this topic, but
What do you
let me
care
just
about? Like,
let me
That's
just say
fine.
fine.
this.
I just
Okay, but going off of what you said, Mark, and not I don't want to,
yeah.
like, where you were saying that there's a particular thing that can somehow possibly have the building blocks for RNA, and it comes from an asteroid. Do you guys find it offensive that I would say, in essence, you think that you came from a rock because an asteroid's
I
kind of
think
like a
that the
rock?
man
Is
that you
that a
got that from doesn't even believe what he's saying. I think that the man you got that from has been caught by his own employees on camera laughing that people believe that.
All right, I don't. I would, if you want to present that video.
Yeah, of course.
Go
I can
ahead.
send that to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
send
course.
it to me.
Can you repeat that claim again? I maybe I missed something.
You might have missed it. You might have been coming in when you missed it. So Mark earlier was talking about because I asked him. I said, "Well, you tell me, give me an explanation of how we were formed, or animals, or plants, or whatever evolutionary process that you want to talk about, where it didn't involve a rock." And he said that, well, there is one prevailing theory of certain components within
No, no.
asteroids, and I don't want
I
to say it
didn't.
wrong, but okay.
You didn't say not involving a rock. That's not what you
I
said.
did.
Minerals
I assumed that you didn't.
That's like saying, show me a plant grown
Okay,
without
fine.
involving the earth. You know, like that's ridiculous.
Okay, well then we're in agreement. You know, so but I see. But again, I mean, I get how silly of a statement it is and how insulting it can be. I'm more fascinated with why you guys find it so insulting.
It's a straw man. It's because it's a straw man. It's like us saying, "Hey, you worship a big sky daddy that does magic and
which you
breathes
guys say
on
all
dust."
the time.
Well,
I don't say that. I don't say that. I don't say that.
I understand that you have a deeper philosophical and what you understand is spiritual, but I would consider psychological. But that doesn't matter. I understand that it's real to you. I wouldn't disparage what you believe in. Call it that.
I very rarely attempt to use any ad homs when it comes to any of my talking with anyone, discussing anything whatsoever.
Well,
so I don't use anything unless someone else
say. PTown, regardless of whether we do it or not, right? It's a two quo fallacy. You're basically saying, well, two wrongs make a right. They're both straw men, right? Because they don't represent. Like if I say, oh, your sky daddy that you were, that's not representing what you actually believe, right?
Correct.
Which is sort of, you know, I'm saying magic. It's really to you, it's spiritual. I'm really doing a sort of caricature of your beliefs to try and make it sound absurd. And understanding that, and I know you understand that because that's why people do it, you're doing, like when you say you come from a rock, you're doing exactly the same thing. It's not precise. It's a straw man caricature of what the actual explanation is.
Right. And you'll notice that I just want to put out there that I don't say it primarily because it bothers you guys. I'm not in the business of triggering you, even though it's often used against me when they say, hey, why should we believe in God? And you do this too, Mark, all the time. Why should we believe in God? Why, when I don't believe in leprechauns, right? Or you do use those.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as
and I think that's a fair question, though, right? And it's just saying it's a fair question. You saying how do you mean you come from a rock? And I give you the explanation that I just gave you. And I'm okay with you saying I come from a rock as long as you're also willing to say, I come from sunshine because by the vitamins that get that are into my development were from the sun. If you say I come from sunshine and corn and dead animals, if you say that too, then I'm okay with you saying I come from a rock. But if you're not saying that, if you're saying like just a rock, then no, I disagree and think that's a misrepresentation. Right. Whereas the same thing, if I said you have a sky daddy, you could say no, it's more of a creator outside of time and space that we can't really understand. And just if you gave me an explanation like that, I'd be like, okay, that's not a sky daddy.
What we're talking about today is, if it's okay, not to derail the Kent Hovind, you think you came from a rock train, but we are talking about today cosmology and astrology, which, as you guys know, is my symbol of an eclipse. I think that it's the accuracy.
Well, why he does it, right?
Are we going back to Kent Hovind?
Well, why he does that.
To bother you guys. Yeah, to trigger you.
Yeah, because what happens in debate is you'll make a really good point. So he'll say it to derail, the conversation and get it down this other path that he wants. It's just a tactic that he uses, which isn't very honest in my opinion, but that is his tactics.
I would argue it might be too honest, boys. I mean, and ladies.
Too honest.
Okay. PTown, I'd like to take your back for just a moment, right?
All right.
So I'm a theist. I'm a polytheist. But not not.
What are your gods?
I don't try to say that I represent any sort of gods or that I worship any sort of gods. I believe maybe there's a lot of things that could be possible, right? If I had to direct my attention to someone, I have my meanings towards that. That said, I don't understand why it is that Christians seem to be so extreme and getting away from. Okay, the Bible says that God's put it into words and then made everything, right? I mean, that kind of aligns with the Big Bang, right? Like, I mean, maybe the dude said bang, boom, everything's there, right? Maybe there was nothing and there was something. So there was a small, encapsulated ball of energy at some point in time. And maybe God was that ball of energy, right?
Sure.
I mean, why can't two things coincide with one another? Because even according to your book, which I don't worship your book, I don't even like your book. Like according to your book, those things can still be plausible. Those things can still work side by side with science. Those things can still sound good with science. And I don't understand why it is that the Abrahamic faiths of the last less than like 1,500 years have taken a step back away from those things, whereas 1,600 years ago, those Abrahamic faiths more closely aligned with the sciences as they were coming about. And it seems in the last few decades, easily under a century, Christians have taken a strong stance against this, right? Rather than coinciding with science.
Most Christians believe in the Big Bang. I mean, I think it was Lemaitre who did the first, he coined the Big Bang and was the first to suggest it. And he was like a Catholic priest or something. So most Christians accept the Big Bang theory.
I would believe that. Yeah, I would accept that.
Yeah,
for sure. So why is it, PTown, why is it so necessary to be against the science when the two things can coincide with one another?
I don't think it's fair to say PTown's against the science. I think that he doesn't accept certain aspects of what we understand to be science. I could be a better way, because he doesn't think that what we're talking about there is science.
But those two things can go hand in hand, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Can absolutely be side by side. They can work together. What Mark's saying, and which I would fortunately more closely align with, even as a creationist, I would more closely align with what Mark's saying. I think that those two things can closely align with one another. I think they can go hand in hand. I don't see a reason why they can't.
I think you're on a journey, and I think if you really looked at the book that you hate now, which I understand because I've been there.
I don't hate it.
You look at it. If you look at it from an objective standpoint, and if you put away the other stuff that is challenging, and you take a look at what God says and declares about the universe, about the world that He created, He made a light for day and a light for night. Those two things happen to be the same size from our vantage point. When they align, you get the solar eclipse. I think it's uncanny. It's an uncanny coincidence.
So you're talking about the perfections within the universe, which God also says He created.
Okay. But He also talks about
how is that objective?
Let me finish, guys. He also talks about how the stars are innumerable, that they can't be counted, right? And how the universe is stretched out. How He stretched it out, and it's still stretching. How the stars specifically are glorious and powerful. These are all things that were discovered over time by the scientific, quote unquote, people, scientists over time, only to glorify His book. That's my perspective, caught in the middle. And I think that now with the advent of this particular telescope, what we are seeing is another smack in the face to the quote unquote scientists of our era, as it has always been the case throughout time. The Bible has reigned supreme and always will.
I think that science says exactly what you're saying, in that science itself never says that it's fact. Science itself always says that it's always a point of growth and contention. It's something left for others to be in contention of, to question. I think that your book goes hand in hand with everything you just said. Everything you just said. And I never said I hate your book. I said it's very new and I don't worship it.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that it doesn't say that the heavens are still stretching. It actually says that He stretches it out like a tent, a canopy for us to live under. So it doesn't say that it's still stretching. That's just something you've added, PTown. It doesn't say that.
Do you speak Hebrew?
A lot of these languages are kind of the language that is used, like at one point he says like the four corners of the earth. It doesn't mean literal corners. And when it sort of says that He stretched out the heavens like a tent, that in no way could the universe could be compared with a tent.
I disagree with everything you just said, Mark. I think that is what they thought, what they meant when they wrote the Bible. I think that that's what they believed when they wrote the Bible.
You guys are
That
it's important
they thought it was four corners, yes, but
Mhm.
in no way could you sort of say that the universe has four corners. So you're really
No, I don't
just
think it
picking.
comports with reality. I think
And
that's
see,
just
Well,
what
no.
people thought a
I
long
think
time
you're
ago.
just picking what you want to be true because of the way that it says it, and say, oh, science finds something, I'm going to find something in the Bible to marry up with that. You're post hoc rationalizing it after the fact of when it's been found. You're going back and saying, hey, I can make this verse in the Bible fit with it, but this other verse about four corners, I can't make that fit, so I'm just going to drop it. It doesn't mean anything.
But see, Bumble, I would have to have PTown's version on this, right? So at that point in time, we had discovered the compass. We knew there were four directions: east, north, south, east, and west. And I would say
Cardinal
that maybe
directions.
those are four tempos, right? There's tons of metaphors across the Bible.
What
Once
Mark
again,
is
I don't
actually,
agree with the Bible. I don't
what
even
Mark is
like the
actually
Bible.
doing is
but
he's just trying to he doesn't want to actually have a topic or a discussion on the topic that I'm presenting. He wants to redirect and
I like
point
what
at the
Mark's
flaws
saying
in
too,
the
though. I like what you're
didn't
saying. I
bring
like
up
what
this
Mark's
topic.
saying.
which is in line with what his argument is.
I
Is
think
that
both.
if
I
there
think
is
both of
something
what you
in the
guys are saying
Bible,
can align.
if there is something in the Bible that can be clearly proven false, then we should discredit the whole thing. But I
P-Town?
think that one of the big things is that you really just can't do that to the Bible, which is the fact that it stood the test of time up to now. I know that you can play games with the Hebrew language, Mark, and it's hard to pinpoint it into a corner. But your argument that the four corners means that it's describing the Earth or the universe as having four corners is derailing what it could possibly mean. But go ahead, Bree.
What if I could show you that part of the Bible is actually not about the story that's attributed to God there, to Yahweh, to the Hebrew God, is actually a different character and it's borrowed from a different mythology directly. I mean, like, what if I could demonstrate that to you? Like, if I could say that, okay, Job is a story from when he talks about Leviathan and the divine beast and all that. It's clearly a reference
from something else.
Yeah,
right?
that he pulled it from a pantheon of mythology where Marduk was actually the one who did the feats. Yeah.
Well, you're operating under the premise that these other viewpoints that they came before, say, the story of Job, or
right.
There's some premises where I don't really have the time to dive into that. Hopefully you follow my argument.
But that's how I do. I got a question about that though. So do you? Because I guess it has to be on faith, though, right? That you decide that you're the Old Testament version is the oldest one, because even if we have like written records of a different group recorded the same myth that's older, right, in an older text, you still would say that that's derivative of yours, but there's just no older written record of yours. Is that your position?
Yeah, I mean, it's well known that during the time of Moses, it was when the Old Testament, the Torah, was written, and arguably the Book of Job was written before that. But when it comes to the actual stories themselves, though, I would say could be older than these other mythologies. The idea that there are other mythologies is, in particular, I like to. You talk about the flood, for example. Just because you have these other interpretations or stories that have, quote unquote, evolved, it doesn't. And people will use those. Oh, look, they just took these other stories and created Noah's the story of Noah's flood from it, for example. I don't think is a fully sound argument from my perspective, right? I think, but again, I'm not going to spend the time. I haven't invested the time into all of that, Bree, but hopefully I answered.
Well, I don't want to derail about Genesis when you're wanting to about these parts of Genesis when you're wanting to talk about the cosmology part. So let's get back to that. Unless Caught in the Middle had something relevant.
No. My apology was that I was going to bring us away from that topic a bit.
If it's okay, I like this topic.
I don't want to bring us away from that. My apologies.
Yeah, let's focus.
I like this topic because, and again, the reason why I use the solar eclipse example is because it's a demonstration of epistemology, how we can both look at the same thing and yet have different viewpoints on what it means.
Then it's subjective, not objective.
the thing itself is objective, but what you think
Well,
about it is
you
subjective.
sort of said it was objective evidence, and it's
Well, I'm not the
because
best with words, but I'm saying is how we can look at the same thing and then come up with different viewpoints of it. It's just
well,
a simple.
The fact that it's happening is objective, right? The fact that it's the I presume you do believe that it's not God physically doing it; it's the forces of gravity and the way that the orbital planes interact with one another and the distance from. You're postulating another explanation beyond that, and that's that God arranged for this satellite, the moon, to be at a distance away from us in order to show us the magnificence of his creation. Have I got that right?
I don't know. I mean, we've talked about the solar.
Tell me.
What I was trying to get into was what we have now, quite frankly, guys, is a discovery that this telescope was designed to look into that completely shatters our current secularist view of the Big Bang. And
it doesn't shatter Big Bang.
Explain to me how it doesn't. Because they're going to have to make up some other random made up story.
No. They're not making up anything. What they're doing is saying, hey, there's something happening here that we don't understand. It doesn't shatter Big Bang. It doesn't sort of say, hey, the redshift is suddenly wrong, or the microwave background radiation is suddenly wrong. That's not what it's saying. It's saying there's something about sort of galactic formation and the formation of solar systems that we need to find out because something else is happening. Now, you want to sort of say, well, it's a God that is involved here because, your previous calculations were wrong. And that's not true. You can't just insert a God. We've got to find out why these occurred. The fact that we don't know isn't a justifiable reason to say, hey, well, it was definitely a God then. Like, don't forget, Newton's equations on gravity were wrong, kind of thing. It was replaced by relativity because we learnt a lot more. And they may be replaced by something else, maybe quantum gravity or something. We're not sure. But, we don't just say, hey, we don't know, therefore God. That isn't how this works.
And PTown, that's why I kind of keep falling back on, why wouldn't your argument be that this lecture, these paragraphs, these words are before modern science, yet I can still relate every sentence of this to modern science. Like, these things still all closely align without me saying, I came from a rock, or you came from a rock, or we came from this, or the earth is flat, or the earth is only 6,000 years old, or any of these other, I'm going to say absurd, but I don't mean that to be rude, terminologies. Like, it still lines up. You could make that standpoint a lot easier against certain people than you could, we came from a rock, debate me.
Well, again, I wasn't the one that said, I'm not making the argument that you guys think you came from a rock. I don't do that out of courtesy.
Okay, well, let's drop that one then. Let's just drop that
one. But I don't know, you barely know me, but I continually use the argument that the Bible and its scientific accuracy, its descriptions of things, is way before recent scientific discoveries discovered them. Relatively recent. I use the word relatively because it's important to keep. Yes, there's plenty of them, boys.
Accurate.
Yes.
Are you familiar with something?
It's not.
It is. Are you
familiar with a concept called the Sirius mystery?
PTown? I don't know, Bree.
Oh my gosh! I think you'll like it because the stuff that you're like.
You talking about the stars or?
Yeah, it's about the stars. There's this. So there's this they call the Dogon people in Africa. They're in Mali, right? And they had this story, this part of their mythology where they knew that there was this planet that was around I think it was circulating Sirius B, right? And they knew this before any technology or anything. So I mean that's kind of the level of evidential credulity that you're giving me here with these biblical voices. Do you believe that they had sacred knowledge as well? Or do you think that these kind of things can just, with the thousands of years that humans have been around, and thousands of people who've thrown out, who've written things down, that having little pieces of your mythology that can be aligned with later discoveries.
What did they specifically say again? I zoned out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, it's kind
me.
of involved. It's fine. No, it's really
no. It's
involved.
entirely my fault. Like if I
about the orbit of the star system, right? Of the Sirius star system is what it was regarding. These this indigenous tribe that still lived very primitively at the time. They knew about the rotation and positions of these stars and the planets that rotate them and everything, because they claim to have had contact with supernatural or alien beings that gave them this sacred and divine information long ago, right?
Okay.
And they knew they knew about this before there was the telescopes and things in place for them to be able to understand it. Now, do you believe that's true? Because I mean, we got to give everything the same level of credulity, right?
Right. From your perspective, I appreciate that. Yeah, I get it, and I do want to just say that compared to the Bible, it's not comparable. But I do, and I'm going to just go out on the fringe here and just say it. I do believe that there is an adversary at play, and I know this is fringe, but he has a mission, and other quote unquote beings coming and teaching another group of people something that is accurate, possibly, or half true, is a consistent theme. This is me getting into my deep beliefs, and it's not just in like, it's even now our modern perspective on it. It can go, but again, I don't want to get into this discussion because I know how it'll make me look, but I do think that there is a spiritual, quote unquote spiritual aspect.
Honey, I came here to make me look good, not you. Come on now, play with me.
And sort of, so if I could show you a couple of scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, would you sort of retract that it's scientifically accurate and has no errors?
Didn't I just say that was exactly going to be what you were going to want to say? You're going to say, hey, I'm going to pinpoint something instead of talking about the actual topic at hand. You're going to pinpoint something in the Bible.
Well, PTown, hang on a second.
Hang on a second. I literally called what you were going to do, Mark.
PTown.
They're like a married couple, aren't they?
If I say, like, if I say, hang on a second, hang on. If I say there's no scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, and you say there are scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, and you say no, there's not, we've got a conflict of belief. We have me saying one thing and you saying another. But the weird thing is when I go to, well, let me point out the scientific inaccuracies, suddenly you're not interested. You don't want to know if what you have claimed is in fact a true claim or a false claim. You just want to believe it.
Look, I mean, I just don't have the time to dismiss each one of your possible false claims. When you and I both don't know Hebrew, and it takes a lot to go into each one of them. I'd rather talk about the simple things where God said, the heavens declare the glory of God, talks about how the number of them are uncountable. This is pretty clear, according to Scripture, as far as I can tell. Before the advent of the telescope, you can only count about 1,100 of them with your naked eye. That's way less than uncountable. And each time, as science progresses, as we get telescopes that are better, and then as we put them on mountains, and then as we put them in space, and then as we put them further out in space with multiple shiny pieces of metal, continually we find out how truly innumerable and magnificent the universe is, and it truly declares the glory of God. This is something that the Bible said and has continually throughout time proven itself to be true, Mark. But you want to talk about something that you can't read because you don't speak Hebrew. You want to pinpoint the parts that are inaccurate, which I think is derailing the conversation. But we can.
Yeah, so I think I think if I want to respond to that caught in the middle. I'll
sure.
give it up
Yeah,
right
do your
afterwards.
thing,
But
Yep.
this whole thing is you claiming that the Bible has some sort of special knowledge that they didn't have, and there can be up to a few thousand stars in the sky, and that on some nights you can see more, on some nights you can see less. It's not a great stretch for them to imagine that the stars are uncountable kind of thing, because they know there's a lot of them. And it all goes back to the Hebrew and what uncountable means and all of this kind of stuff. But there's definitely things in there that are factually untrue, like scientifically factually untrue. If you want to say the problem is that you're using something called the Texas. Hang on. The problem is you're using something called the Texas
Mark, he's just asking for first premise. Just asking for first premise. He's giving you the floor.
You had your first premise, and then you redirected. You're going to redirect to something that you think is false. Well, you were talking about.
No. I'm just saying you're counting all the hits.
PTown, give him the floor now. You said he had.
You're counting all hits, but not counting any of the misses. It's called the Texas sharpshooter. It's basically going through and saying, "Hey, this hits, and ignoring the ones that are actually wrong."
Okay, now respond, PTown.
You're going to want to redirect. You're going to belittle what I said, and then you're going to redirect. You want to go to the possibilities in the Bible that you think aren't accurate.
All right.
When I want to talk
hold on, PTown, you're in the meta right now. Let's respond to what he said about the scripture.
When it comes to the stars, your argument is that you said 2,000. About a couple thousand is what you can see with the naked eye, and the idea that in the eye.
Also, yeah.
2004, and you're looking at your computer, but you're not considering the two hemispheres, right? Because it depends.
Is that northern hemisphere, Mark, or is that both?
That's on any given night in a single hemisphere. You can see about 2,600 to 4,500.
So there's a difference in language here. See how important it is that we understand what each other are saying here.
It's not really an accurate statement if you actually do the research, Mark, instead of just looking at your right monitor. But it's regardless still.
Come on!
Would you agree with me that people?
I looked it up.
Wait! It's virtuous to fact check your things that you say. Now
it's okay. It's okay.
It's virtuous. I encourage you to do it too, PTown.
I wish I didn't. I wish I had multiple monitors. Trust me.
Yeah.
I can get you.
How far are you from being able to afford one? Are you within the ballpark? Because I can help you find a cheap one.
I like my laptop. I have a portable one I haven't used for years. But.
Well, what I used to do before I got my PC was I'd have my laptop and I just hook another monitor up right into it just to have an extra monitor when I sit down.
Is it pretty easy? Yeah.
Yeah, just plug it in and go to the settings. Yeah.
Yeah, plug and play basically takes it over. You might have to stuff around with the settings to choose which.
I actually might have an old laptop around here too. Yeah. Anyway,
but my point
go on with your arguments.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. There is a good argument for this idea that, in an allegorical way, God was referring to the stars being uncountable, and that the perception of the period of the people in that time were that the stars were uncountable, and I acknowledge that. And this stems with something that you said earlier, Bree. But I look at the Bible as being more than just something that was written by or for the people of the time. I believe it was written by God. And in this sense, I think it was written for us even now, this time period. So what it says, I take it even more literally, that the stars are literally uncountable. Whether or not we're referring to these, because from your viewpoint, we're going to look at these people as primitive. But it's my viewpoint that they could count to 1,100. See, I have a different view. I believe that they could count to 1,100, or even let's give your crazy number of the stars.
I don't think Mark would disagree they could count to 1,100.
Yeah, I don't think I would disagree with that. No,
you wouldn't. So okay. I just wanted to clarify because that's the main argument is that they couldn't literally count that high, which I think is a very poor argument. I'm literally in an email.
I'm not making that argument.
PTown, I want to give you a little help here, okay? So you're saying that you nor Mark nor I don't know about Bumble. Bumble, can you read Hebraic?
No, I cannot.
Okay, so none of the four of us can read, Hebraic, right? So that said, your version, which is my version, which would be Mark's version, which would be Bree's version of the Bible, which we could say KJV, NIV, ESV, all these different versions, right?
Comparative
So
translations. That's what we're into here.
We're
all a bunch of comparative translation nerds. Yay!
The ones we would use I would say that what your closest relationship would be to KJV, right? Probably to Hebraic. Yes or no?
I like to use the KJV, but I go to the Hebrew. You know, there's technology out there for all that.
Right. So there's KJV, and that's the one that you probably were brought up on with your faith. That's
I wasn't brought up as Christian.
That's probably the one you would more closely relate to, right? Like when you're coming up with your theories, like we're talking about tonight.
I go to the Hebrew, but I use King James Version is what I prefer.
Okay. Do you think that the King James version best reflects the Hebrew? Is that the claim?
In a lot of cases, especially compared to the modern Christian, you know, the modern biblical. It just depends, though.
So I don't get how translating from Hebrew to Old English, to me, that's like, let's not do that.
I'm with you on this, right?
Actually, Bree, the these and the thous weren't actually a common, like a way of speaking at that time. They did it because it was easier to translate, because it was easier to understand the Bible. I think anyway.
Okay, so I'm with you on this thought process, right? So whether or not any of us can discern any of this, right? It doesn't really matter so much, man, because the people that can, which at this point in time would just be primarily Jews or historians or scholars and people that just study language a lot.
Or that sexy ass Bowen guy.
So the people that can, the vast majority of them still believe in the scientific theory that, you know, the earth is fat, or not flat, it's old, and the Big Bang Theory, man. Like they're all coming from the same perspective. I'm not going to say all. I shouldn't utilize the word all, but the vast majority of them are still coming from that perspective, right? They put a lot of study into this stuff, and I think the vast majority of them are also able to correlate the verses of Genesis towards science to make both prevalent at the same time, so that if you're reading Genesis, you're also reading like a breakdown of the Big Bang, and you're still able to say, even as a Christian, Jew, any of the Abrahamic faiths, you're able to say, hey, God had it first. Like, why is that not more of a prevalent argument? Like, you're still agreeing with science while also agreeing with what's biblical. And
because Big Bang doesn't disprove a God, right? That's basically what you're saying, is Big Bang doesn't disprove a God.
Right.
We can acknowledge that, and a God could still have started
the whole process. Yeah. Correct.
Well, there's certain parts of it though that contradict the secularist views when it comes to a lot of parts of science. Well, I mean, Big Bad Mama brought up one. I mean, there's what trees were formed before light, for example, or before the sun. That's a common.
Well, I think
argument.
the worst one is that Earth was formed before the sun.
I mean,
there's that too, right? Or let's just say light was made before the sun and the stars. Like like there's specific things that God says in His book that completely defy. I take a more of a literal view.
I think that would be a lot easier to explain away, right? I mean, I'm looking at it right now, right?
If you want to say that God
in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, so God created everything we see around us and the earth, right? And the earth was without form and void. Okay, so earth is all fucked up. It's a big ball of lava and rocks, right? And the darkness was upon the face of the earth. Okay, so we didn't have so much light at the point, right? It was really dark. Great, cool. And the Spirit of God, I don't know about that part, moved across the face of the waters. Okay, cool. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. There's no trees still. There's still no trees at this point. So,
right. That's why
there's still no sun either.
No sun. So it's kind of like an argument that it's like, yeah, I get it, but the Bible the Bible says it made light.
I mean,
before the sun.
I could make that argument for you though, and I'm not a Christian. I don't agree with this.
There's no
book, but I could
contradictions
make
in
that
the Bible,
argument.
even though it sounds ridiculous from a scientific standpoint.
I mean,
even though
how
it's
much would the
scientifically
Hebraic
accurate.
version disagree with what those were, though? What those
pretty much
those
not,
verses are?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I don't see it as contradictory, but it's only not contradictory if you have a sort of omnipotent being to make these things happen. It definitely is contradictory with science, but if you're talking about logical contradictions, then no, you're right. It's not logically contradictory, but it certainly does contradict science.
Right. But I would encourage you though, caught in the middle, and I never recommend this honestly because I don't really like the guy and his viewpoints, but Hugh Ross is really good at doing. Hugh Ross, go watch his stuff because I think that's the path that you're on. And it was when I first finally read the Bible, I saw the same, but I finally took it seriously and read Genesis 1 and 2. I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to pair the Big Bang. I wanted to pair evolution. And you start to see patterns, right?
Now,
where it could work. And go look at Hugh Ross's stuff.
I mean, for myself personally, I'll call you bro. I mean, I think I'm past that point. I think that I'm of a point where things are much older than the Bible, which is what I was going to hint on earlier. So I don't want to derail us here. Just talking about myself for a moment. I think that there are many phase religions historically or archaeologically, scientifically. There are faiths that are much older, and I think they make more sense. So for me, what is James Hake? James Hake says I disavow Christianity, but I don't try to beat you guys up either, unless we're debating. If we're gonna debate directly, then I'm gonna try to beat you up.
Okay. Well,
but I'll try to help you out when I can.
Good luck with that.
The next line sort of says, God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So that's sort of weird with our current understanding of, how the Earth rotates kind of thing. Like, what is he doing to separate the light from the darkness that we wouldn't get from the Earth rotating around us? Well, the sun doesn't even exist at this point. So that's a really weird thing to say.
I think I could easily argue that one, though, Mark, with saying just, basic understanding. That's just a basic viewable understanding of what's going on. And you're able to translate that easier into words more so than things you don't understand, right? So simply saying, and God, all right, hold on, my apologies, 1 second.
Yeah.
It's simply saying, God created
I
heaven and earth. That's such a basic gist, even at a scientific spectrum, right? That's such a basic, you can't get any more basic than that. There's nothing, there's something, so there's everything, and then there's earth, right?
Yeah,
you can't get more basic than that. So,
I get that, but sort of what I'm looking at is does it mesh with so how does it mesh with our scientific understanding? And even if you want to say, hey, I don't believe that planetary formation happened, I think that God created it, that's fine, right? But if you're talking about separating the light into day and the darkness into night when there's no sun, that's weirder for me, because the way that night and day work is the Earth rotates, and that you don't. I don't understand what separating it would even mean.
Are we saying this without the thought that he created the sun first, like when he created the heaven and the earth?
Wait, no, it's the third day when it created the sun, right? I think it was the third day.
I'm looking at verse 3, and he says, "Let there be light," and there was light, and then he saw the light was good.
Just said he created
3 and 4, right?
Day 4.
Yeah, so
he just called the light day on the verse 4, right?
Right.
that's
So
one
so
day.
But that was already light.
On verse, but not day, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is that like there is no contradictions in the Bible, even as crazy as it sounds. There's no contradictions. Like the idea that God made
Let me
light
help you out,
before it.
PTown.
Wait. Did you say there's no contradictions?
There's no
There's
contradictions. Yeah.
no contradictions.
But I know.
in the Bible.
Blow your mind. Okay, but
I'm trying to help you out,
here.
man. Damn.
Okay, Bree, I know you're getting excited, but the apparent contradiction here, which is there's light before the lights. Okay, there was light before the sun. I think it serves a purpose too, especially when you look at the light traveling to us from distances. The concept that God can make a light while it's traveling, I think, is an okay thing. If you're going to be as crazy as I am and actually believe the Bible, why not? It's okay. If you can believe that God can make a fully formed man out of the dust of the ground, then I think he can make light in its traveling form. Follow me?
We're gonna have to. I want to have a whole conversation about Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 with you, but it's too big for this stream with all four of us here to get into. Actually,
I'd really like to come back to the topic, like when you have more time, PTown, to discuss further into certain things.
But what we have though right now, just to bring us back to the beginning, is we have something. We spent $30 billion, I'm guessing, on this telescope. Okay, to prove the Big Bang. And what does it do? It glorifies God. That's what happened. Mark,
that's not what it's for. That wasn't what it's for. It was to understand the formation of galaxies. Well, what are you talking about?
PTown,
maybe I'm jumping a little bit here. Let me rephrase it. What you had, what we spent probably about $30 billion on a telescope, primarily to look into the deep past, where we theorize that galaxies weren't formed yet or couldn't quite form yet, but we're in the process of forming. This is what we thought we would see.
Right.
And then we found out that, there's basically fully formed galaxies that are much larger, that defy our current understanding of what we would call the Big Bang Theory.
So why does that mean God to you?
It's just what Scripture says. I mean, he made that, Mark. He made the universe. So you can look at it and go, guess what?
No, PTown.
The stars are uncountable. That the heavens declare the glory of God, and he made it to declare
just
that
because
glory.
Something we think is wrong about science doesn't give you leeway to insert a God. That is God of the gaps. So if we look back and say, hey, we want to study the early formation of the universe, find out how it's all done, and we look back and say, hey, this doesn't mesh with our current model. We need a better model, but that model is not automatically a God. You have to show that by yourself. You can't just say, hey, something is wrong about our current model of the universe. It has to be a God, because you haven't demonstrated that.
Well, just so you know, I don't think you can science your way to Jesus. I don't know why God made it that way, but there is a measure of faith here. But I just want you to know that the Bible has been and always will stand the test of time. And when it comes to the James Webb Telescope, it glorifies the book, baby.
Because the original hasn't stood the test of time. You know, the Greek that it was in is the ancient Greek that it was in is kind of a bit of a dead language. The Latin that it was written in is a dead language. The Bible hasn't stood the test of time. It's just been retranslated.
See, PTown, I still don't understand why you can't fall back on exactly what I'm saying, right? Like more broad spectrum. Like if it was trying to be very scientific, they could have added a whole lot more sentences, right? You could have had a lot more verses in Genesis 1 to explain things away, but they didn't, right? Very broad spectrum. I think you could still make that argument a lot better, right?
Could God have written it as a scientific textbook if he wanted to? But I think he's more concerned about our hearts. I don't think God cares how smart we think that we are. I continually say that because I don't know how else to describe it. God doesn't want us to find him through. I know that I, for some reason, have that platform, and I'll declare it because it's the truth. but I don't think God intends us to discover him by us just using our brains in a logical fashion primarily. For some reason, you have to have a measure of faith and ask him to help you, and then things are revealed to you.
And then just believe.
The mere idea that, honestly, caught in the middle, the fact that God was able to do that and create a way of relaying his message so that it defies our human way of doing it is to me evidence that the God of the Bible is real.
Well, I think
it
that
blows my
if
mind.
he wanted to impress me, he should have included penicillin or something really useful to humanity. Why didn't he tell us
in the Bible?
We've covered this
before, Mark.
What do you mean? But it seems to be things that are the knowledge of people for the time. It doesn't seem to be anything supernatural or anything that is like secret knowledge. It just was stuff that people knew. I mean, nobody's sort of saying that it's not a book that, has some information in it, but all the information could have been discovered by the people who lived at the time. Either that or, you've got to generously interpret it so that it fits with modern scientific understanding.
I would disagree.
Well, yeah,
I would agree. I would agree with the possibility that that's the case. For how God was able to do both. Yeah, and that's the thing is we can ultimately, it comes down to this. Your argument is God got lucky that it happens to look like he predicted the future. And I'm just going to say no, he actually did.
That's not what I'm saying, PTown. I'm not saying God got lucky. What I'm saying is that you've got these things in the Bible written in a sort of poetic or hyperbolic way. The ones that mesh up or that you can fit with our current scientific understanding, you say, well, that's a prediction of all this stuff. The people in Islam do it all the time. They make these sort of leaps about their book to say, hey, they knew that the embryo was like chewed gum and they knew this and they knew that, when, it's just an interpretation that meshes with our current scientific understanding. All the ones that don't mesh up, you can't possibly fit, you don't want to hear about and just drop. And so I don't think that God just got lucky. I don't think there was a God. People just wrote things to describe them because that was their current understanding of the world at that time. And some of the things you can sort of say, hey, that kind of fits with what we know now, but it's a post hoc rationalization. It's basically waiting for science to do all the work and then trying to fit things in your Bible with what the science says.
Well, we should look at individual verses and spend some time doing that one day, Mark. I mean,
sure.
If you
more than happy
want
to.
Okay.
Yeah, more than happy to.
Bree, do you want to say anything else? Caught in the middle.
Thanks for having me on.
You're always welcome.
Oh, are you shutting down the stream, PTown?
Probably pretty soon here.
Okay. All right, no worries.
We can digress. I'll back on another topic that you wanted to cover if you want for a couple minutes.
No, that's okay. I don't want to hold you up or anything, PTown. Thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, let's have a conversation about scientific accuracy in the Bible. I'm more than happy to. You've got my email address. We'll just have a conversation about it. That's fine. But I want to, if you are going, I want to thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and genuinely, you guys, I know that, a lot of people will say things like, he was never a real atheist. He's not a real Christian. He's just being dishonest. But
I've never said that. I've never said that.
I don't think you've said that. Yeah, but I genuinely want this. I don't think it's going to happen. But this is tailored towards, the non-believers, the atheists out there.
Sure.
That's what's going on right now. I think it'll change because I don't think it's going to work, but that's always been my
Do you mind if I ask a quick question before we go? What would it mean to you if it were true that the Big Bang happened and that you're just wrong about the time kind of thing? What would it mean to you?
Well, I think I actually talked about that earlier on today during the stream. You might have missed it. I said,
Oh, I might have missed it. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, seriously though, honestly, if they had looked out into space and seen that there, if there were patterns that were evidence for the Big Bang, the way that they predicted it,
Yeah.
And you saw like a dispersion of stars that didn't contain the elements, like though if it fit the narrative, I would have it would have definitely been challenging to me. The person that if you ever looked into Hugh Ross, where I'm kind of against his viewpoint on it, the way that he approaches scripture, but it's right in line with where Caught in the Middle is at. I encourage you, if you don't know about who I'm talking about, he actually debated Kent Hovind. It's a really famous debate. Art.
Fuck Kent Hovind.
And it for me to sacrifice what I believe the Bible to say is a big no-no, and I don't think the Bible. It would have made me second guess things. Quite frankly, I would have. I'm gonna put evidence where it belongs. I'm gonna always look at things logically, with reason, and I'm gonna with a lens, but also I'm gonna approach it critically.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it doesn't appear that way. I'm not the best at articulating it, but we have similar approaches to things, Mark.
PTown, I think you're close to being converted to something else than I am, man.
I'm just glad you're having the conversations, PTown. This is what you need to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
know that people have given you a hard time, PTown, and for what it's worth, I've said, I completely disagree with you. I think you're wrong. You're not a troll. You're not a pode. You're not lying. It's just I have never been on board with that ever. I don't think that you're sort of making it up.
I've never been given any reason to think you were being disingenuous.
Yeah, and same here. I don't know where they get it from, to be honest with you. I really don't know. But
there's a lot of people out there with espousing ideas that are much wilder than anything I've heard you say. And
oh, sure. I've debated some of them. I mean, like, if you've never seen something crazy, Howard Stirrup is like, that was probably the craziest debate I've ever been in. Him trying to say that rocks were the organs of past giants and stuff. Like,
that's Howard George, right?
Yeah, Howard George Stirrup. That's the guy. Yeah. It's sort of mud fossil university stuff. It's just.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Mark was actually in there trying to convince. Mark was actually in there trying to convince us that those giant organs were like just rocks.
Just rocks.
You can clearly see it was like a brain and a heart and a liver and stuff. And Mark's like, "Oh, that's just a rock."
Man, that was a weird one. I have to admit
that was strange.
And
that was the one where he was talking about Prince Charles being like descended from Dracula and that he was a vampire. It was very hard wild to follow, stuff, man.
Yeah. And you have the one guy that also believes that the ISS is a dragon in the sky, right?
Really? I haven't seen
that's the
that
guy
one.
that was with man, I don't want to name code things, but I think he was with Witsit. He was the guy that kept crossing his arms and like standing in front of the camera like this. And he had the hat on.
That one.
Yeah, when the flat earthers tag team, one of them just plays hype man and just stands back with his arms crossed. It's kind of like
do you mean that guy that ate crayons on stream? What was his name?
Maybe was it Brian?
He ate crayons.
There was a flat earther who ate crayons in one of the debates. He just pulled out these crayons and chowed down on them.
I don't remember that. I think his name was Brian, man. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It wasn't that long ago. So
he was just eating crayons.
I'll tell you guys right now, I'll stop you if you start eating crayons on camera. I'll be like, look.
Was it I think it was Flatter-day Saint. Flatter-day Saint. He like wore a baseball cap and he was sort of
I'm gonna be having that guy on my channel at some point in time.
Oh, here we go. I got to share my screen here because this is just hilarious.
Okay.
Screen 2. Is it a video or is it just a picture? Oh, it's just a picture. Yeah, no, okay, that's just the picture. I couldn't find the video, but yeah, he chowed down on crayons. Oh, wait a second. YouTube Shorts.
Gotta believe that this guy has, or that MPD has moved that one to the podcast only. Because I'm looking down and I'm like, let's see.
Oh my gosh, he's just.
And I can't find Brian across any of them, but I'm sure that's what his name was. Maybe he was with Nathan Thompson. I can't remember.
This is fascinating. It's like seeing an animal in the wild kind of thing.
Oh,
I will say his buddy has some of the best pre-ground coffee ever, man. Like, it's fantastic coffee. I'll say that. It's so good, man.
So yeah, that's the flat earther chowing down on the crayons. I wasn't lying. He literally ate some crayons.
That was impressive.
Yeah. I'm trying to get my wife to come on and like maybe sub in for me during one of the Blasphemer Bible studies or something. BBM.
That's Aaron Ra's thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Have you sort of made a commitment to that, or like what's going on with that one?
Oh no, I'm trying to get. Well, I want to be able to get on camera and stuff eventually, but
okay,
I don't have permission yet from the number
this
one.
Jesus.
I'm not sure who this link shows up for, but that's Nathan Thompson and Brian against Reid and Bacon.
I think you have to hit share.
Do you guys remember when Nathan Thompson debated Mark Drysdale and Mark Drysdale like lost his shit? It was so funny.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen Mark Drysdale lose his
that name.
Oh, this was just a month ago.
Yeah, this wasn't long ago.
Are we still live?
I think so.
We are. Caught in the middle. If you want to share something, just I think you have to hit present. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe I post it in the comments here or private chat. I just put it in the private chat.
Mark, do you know how to? Yeah,
it's present down the bottom. It's a little plus sign on a screen, and then you can present, like share your screen or a tab or whatever you need to share.
Gotcha.
Where at in this debate? I can go here.
Oh man, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I remember where he says the ISS is a dragon in the sky. I'm not gonna scroll through the video to find.
Oh, okay.
So it's
But it's in the video. Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, have a good night, everyone. I'm gonna go finish giving. I'm gonna go meet my wife and daughter and finally eat some food and stuff. But
all the best to you and your family.
All the best.
Give them my best.
Yeah.
Good night, PTown.
Good night, guys.
Night, PTown.
Adios.